I would like to kick it off with Beverage Wall setup and also Beverage Wall ambassador program. I did not share any fun facts with you at the beginning when I was introducing my team. The reason for that is because there's a lot of fun facts and you can just pick a few. Usually the first one is my accent. People ask me where I'm from. So I'm from Czech Republic. I speak 6 languages. So if I occasionally say a word you don't understand, just raise your hand. I'll try to say it the proper way in English. And you'll hear quite a bit other fun facts about me. One of those that I like to share, especially when it comes to the proper beverage wall setup, is that I have seen over 130 different self-pour walls now. I've gotten to visit a lot of PourMyBeer locations that were about to kick off their journey, and I got to be a part either of their grand opening, soft opening, training of their staff, how to do it successfully. Hopefully successfully. A lot of them are doing great, so hopefully that helped. And obviously we learned a lot of things throughout the process. In the last 4.5 years that I've been with PourMyBeer, I have seen things done really well. I've seen things that didn't work that well, and the operators learn and then eventually implement in something. So you're gonna see a lot of pictures in my presentation. I highly recommend you to take photos of it. You know, I tried to incorporate as many pictures and visual examples as I could. Again, you're also gonna get the slides, but if at any point you have questions in my presentation, I would love for this to be a little bit more interactive. I don't want you to fall asleep over here. So without further ado, some of the main things that we've learned about successful beverage wall setup are, it really comes down to probably about 10 different points. If we can switch the next slide. It really comes down to probably 10, 12 different points that are a lot of times they're a common sense, and they really are very much things that you would think that this is how the business should do it. But unfortunately, we've also seen it too many times in the field when somebody has already built out their establishment, did things certain way, and you know, if the beverage wall is really hidden in the back and nobody knows about it in the first place, that's not going to set you up for success. And you already have some operators here like Chris, John, who later can probably advise you on a lot of these things and how they executed it. But I'm going to run through some really main points that are crucial. And typically, if you have a location that's in a busy location where you get a foot traffic, if you get these points right, majority of them, you have a successful beverage wall setup. So the very first one that we like to stretch a lot. So I'm using the Navigator taproom picture over here as a great example of really how the wall visibility is important. So one of the things that I've learned from this location, I used to live in Chicago, so I was frequent over here. One of the things that really helped them at the beginning when they opened up in Logan Square in Chicago is that they would have a lot of first-timers that literally came in thanks to the fact that they were just passerbys. There's a lot of food traffic in the area. So when they walk by and they see suddenly that people are there, bartenders, and as you can see, they have 48 tabs. So you see a ton of people just pouring at the same time. For people at the time, now self-pour is becoming a little more known and more people are familiar with it. But back in a day, Tim told me that at the beginning, he would have a ton of traffic really just coming in to see like, hey, what are these guys doing? I want to do that too. So if you can, it's not always possible, but a lot of these locations that are still in the process of build out, we highly recommend that you have it near windows so the random passerbys can see what's happening inside and they can see all the fun that your patrons are having. So a big one is we try to recommend put it in a midway, somewhere really visible. It should be a masterpiece center of your build out, really easy to be seen. And ideally, if you can, place it close to the windows so people that are passing by can see what the fun is about. Another one, and this obviously not every space has, this is Tapster Seattle. They have 58, 57 tabs, I believe. A lot of our establishments are doing really, really well, even with 18, 17 tabs. We have some smaller spaces that actually, it's interesting that our speakers are more on the lower side, lower number of tabs. And we will be introduced to Honor Brewing and Aji's here shortly, later in the day. But general rule is that, especially with the US audience, it would be a little different in my home country. People are happy with 1 Pilsner or 2 Pilsners, and you could give them 2 tabs and they could pour from it all day long and they would be happy. Generally in the US market, and specifically if you go to places and you're trying to be the craft beer place, you want to go to the 18 tabs minimum and then kind of go higher from that. We have a lot of locations that have 50, 60, 70 tabs and are doing amazing with it. Chris in the back there started with 68 and he's just adding 10 more. So you can definitely start on the lower end, but at least make sure that if your space has the ability to later have more tabs, account for it. I even think that you mentioned that you might be doing more tabs too, right? But more on that later. Hopping on to the next slide. So some of the other really big important things besides that midway piece, getting that attention with a lot of tabs and, really driving the needle to your self-pour setup being the dominant feature of your establishment, is really just driving attention to it again, to not make it cold. So I like to say, like, hey, have a nice big promotional signage that will drive attention to the fact, like, you're your own bartender, you self-pour beer here. I've also seen like beer buffet. I've provided some examples, photos here again if somebody has any guesses on those two spots, but I don't see any hands up, so I'll have to let you explore that yourself. Be Awesome is just one of them. I've definitely seen a lot of pour. Fun way, in English, I have seen people do pour decisions, but spelled with P-O-U-R instead of pour decisions. Lots of Instagram content comes from that, right? It's a user-generated content that you don't pay anything, but when your thirsty patrons come to your establishment and suddenly you have people taking photos of your space and they are tagging just their friend or significant other that they are with, but they all have their own audiences. And guess what? Most of the time that audience is already in your town, in your city. I know there's a few touristy spots that for them it's not that easy to get exposure, but majority of the operators right here in the room, and hopefully the ones that will be listening later as well, really care for the retention and having the same customers coming back for more and more. So you want them to take that picture of the fun wall, having some fun signage, whatever it is for you, whatever makes sense. We have some college town bars and also like sports town that actually played a lot with their teams, local teams that are very popular, like football, baseball, and just put memorabilia at the top, put flags of that team at the top. Again, people take picture of it, gets on their social media, and you're getting that free exposure that you didn't have to pay anything for. So why not? Why not? Make it fun. My big thing is, like, when you're thinking of your beverage wall build out, would you want to see that? Like, is it pretty? Is it nice to look at? Another thing also to keep in mind, a lot of times people look at screens as something a little bit colder, right? So if you can make it warm by either having plants around it, maybe some wood around it, make it warm, make it inviting, not just stainless steel cold, and it doesn't attract the same traffic, same type of attention. Next one, and this is not specifically for Untappd. Personally, I'm a big fan of Untappd. For those of you that do not know what Untappd is the biggest beer database. Another fun fact about me is that I started using Untappd way before I joined PourMyBeer. I've been with PourMyBeer for 4.5 years, and I've been using Untappd probably for 5.5 years as a user. I love craft beers. One of the things that probably made me stay in the US was the fact that there was such a big craft beer revolution when I moved here 10 years ago. And I love keeping the track of my beers by checking them in and seeing what's another good beer in this location. I also keep track of all the hazy IPAs from my local Colorado breweries where I am at. And a lot of users, particularly millennials, like using Untappd to be able to keep track of their beers that they've tried, that they've liked. It's a big and popular tool to use for many PourMyBeer locations. The reason why I'm putting it over here for you as an operator is much more for you just having a beer menu. It doesn't have to be Untappd. I know that there might be some of you that might have some strong opinions about Untappd. And for breweries, it's another case scenario, because sometimes what happens is breweries will have a patron that just wants to do as many check-in as possible. And let's say if they are IPA drinkers, they're going to rate your IPAs really high. But if they're not lager people, they're just doing it for the check-in, and they're not going to give that lager the high rating if they're not lager folks. But I think Cindy and Scott might talk about that a little bit more later. So all I will say is, not so much really for the rating type of thing, but I have PourMyBeer locations in our family that will be using it also for their promotions to get more visibility in front of their regulars. So Navigator Taproom that we showed earlier there, what they do really amazing is that their staff members actually encourage anybody who they ever see that they're doing check-ins, which it's honestly pretty easy to spot when you have I'm not gonna say millennial, anybody around the wall, and you see that they're clearly putting the name of the beer in and rating it and sipping, and then they go to another one and they keep doing this. It's very easy to spot that person doing that activity. So what Tim, the owner of Navigator, taught his staff members to do is like, hey, sign up for our notification, sign up for us so you know when the new beers are on. Like, if you like Belgian, we have some new Belgian comings. So he made a really good point to build a big following, and we have several PourMyBeer locations, especially tap rooms, that really work on that, because then what happens is when you put a new beer on the deck, when you have a new beer on tap, you will be able to push that notification to those audiences. So you can have a little reminder, and especially if it's an untapped user that is opening that application on a regular basis, like I open it multiple times a week, I see the new beers that are coming to the locations that I'm following. So definitely a big one. But again, you don't necessarily have to go for Untapped. There is a lot of other programs and tools you can use for your beer menu. I particularly like Untapped, not just because it's the menu that you can, by the way, embed on your website really easily too, or social media, but it's also the fact that the customers are really, it's easy way and smooth way to navigate. And Jason already mentioned we're integrated with Untapped, so that makes it very easy for you as an operator. Instead of you having to manually populate logo, description of the drink, things like that, it's all in Untapped, so you just populate it in our server through that integration, which makes your life a breeze, particularly in places like Chris's that has almost 70 tabs. It's a lot of beers. It would be a lot of information that he would be writing out manually if there wasn't for Untapped integration. So a really big one. Another one that you can see in the picture over here, and this is, every location really has something different. We have resources available to you for different videos and different graphics on how self-pour works. And I have them in the slides later too. So when this is shared with you, you can access any of our graphics and any of the videos. But I highly recommend, while I love our brand and our logo, and I would love for it to be everywhere, I highly recommend that you do make that spend and you actually work with somebody local to make it your own, either designer for a graphic or have somebody like Rohan take a video and edit that for you. There's lots of videographers all over. I've actually hired a lot of random people off Craigslist that did a wonderful job for just a few $100s. And those are videos that you don't have to just use them at the top of your beverage wall or near your check-in station. You can also use them for your social media. You can use them for a lot of other spots. Even website is a great place to use it. So I highly recommend that you do get piece like that can be utilized when somebody's struggling or not getting clearly the information of your beverage wall ambassador or staff that's explaining it. I'm particularly a big fan of videos because videos are more engaging. So what I've seen is I've been to establishments when we did grand opening and there was this small little graphic how it works in the corner, and the wall, the screens are flashy, they're big, they drive so much attention that nobody was really paying attention to any of the small little graphics on the side. So you really want them either big and visible easily at the top. Some people that are doing it well is if you have the TV available for it, it just drives a lot more attention when it's lit up. But the videos, especially if you have smiling, happy couple, or I don't know, young girls just having so much fun, sampling a lot of different things, that will automatically drag attention and people are much more likely to want to do it. So highly recommend having how to pour video near your wall, ideally at the top of the wall, right next to your beverage menu. I'm gonna just pause it a little bit. Any question on that so far? All good? Yeah, awesome, perfect. So the next one is gonna be use a signage around the wall at the appropriate places. So there's several different, I would like to call them critical spots, like where you grab your pour card, where you get your glass, things like that. It's not always easy and visible. This is one of the picture that I'm using here is, anybody knows? Anybody point? No? Okay. This is a Dave & Buster location. This one is, I believe, the one in Austin. So they were having issues with, having this station was actually just dark wood, and people just didn't even know where to start. So the easy way to fix it is, you put a signage on it that I think the printout was like $120. So it's not a crazy investment. And they immediately saw that suddenly more people are checking in. Sometimes it's silly things like that. A small investment of just $100 can totally change the customer flow. You want to make it as easy as possible. You want them to know where to grab a glass, where to check in, and how to pour. So those are some 3 critical spots. I kind of listed that over here. If you want to make the flow of your customers the smoothest possible, you want to make sure that whenever you have somebody who is first timer coming in, they know what they're doing. If they look confused and if they're looking around and standing like they don't really know what's going on, clearly there is a broken process that needs to be fixed a little bit. Signage is a big one. Having a check-in station that it has a wraparound, having that how it works, graphics and similar, it really makes a big difference. So that's that. Hopping on the next one, and I think that a lot of you that are already operating have multiple check-in stations. I actually had a conversation with some of you that are about to open yesterday that will have several check-in stations. I wanted to point out, so it was hard for me to show it in, so you would see the entire space. This is, anybody knows what this location is? No? Okay. No points for now. Just that one here. So this location is called Hop Thief. It's in Washington State. They have multiple check-in stations. They have 2 different check-in stations when you come at the front of the establishment. But what they've learned, they're traditional sit-down restaurants. So what they found out is that sometimes people come and they're like, no, I don't want to check in. I'm not even gonna drink. But then they see people drinking, so they end up wanting to get their pour card. So this is why eventually they learned from that mistake and added this check-in station here right next to their wall. I believe they have 48 taps. So one of the things that they also ended up doing is they have another check-in station on the side because there is a outside patio entrance, something like this, and they started having people coming through that door. And if you don't have a way how to easy and quick check into customer, especially when you get busy, you're losing your opportunity to do the sale. So I highly recommend it, depending on your build out. If you already are up and running and you see that your check-in station get jammed up, if your space allows it, have another check-in station on the side, especially by the beverage wall. It just makes the most sense. The last thing you ever want to do is to have a self-pour first-timer coming in that is excited to try this experience and be their bartender for the very first time and finding out that they now have to go on the other side of the establishment to get their pour out. Not fun. You want to, again, coming back to the guest experience, you want to make it as easy, as smooth as possible so, they can get that card and get pouring right away, get tasting so they can have some fun with it. Okay, going on to the next one. Okay, if your beverage wall is not visible right upon the entering, this goes back to like my very first point in this presentation. If it's not visible at the very beginning, you want to make sure that you're driving attention to it. I think later we'll have some floor stickers that you can see, like how some of the locations have done it. The ideal case is that it's going to be visible, but if it's not, make sure that, again, there's something driving attention to it, stickers on the floor, signage, maybe even a little banner, really whatever you decide to do to make sure that people know about it. You want to make sure that if you paid for our system, you want to make sure that now that system not only pays for itself, but it continues to make you money. And it's not going to do it if it's hidden in the corner and nobody is using it. So always, trying to drive attention to it. Another one, and this one is a big one, group beverage styles and by the type and their style. Every establishment does that a little bit differently. There is a lot of just a small little signage of like IPA, removable signs that people do. And because if they rotate the beers a lot and they have 5 sours at a certain time of the year, but they only have 2 sours at a certain time of the year, they want to be able to switch them. It's 100% up to you how you do it, particularly one that I like, and this was actually in the previous picture of the Hop Thief in Washington as well, and I'm not going to say which location is this one unless somebody wants to guess. Okay, I'll share that since it looks like nobody knows. This is Frederick Social up in, I think it's still Virginia, I don't know. Yeah, okay. So I will say that these guys did something that a lot of other locations are doing, which is having a chalkboard at the top that makes it significantly easier to just change things as you wish. Another great thing that I will highlight, and I think I'll cover this later in the presentation too, they do have a charity tab over here. So every month they partner up with a different nonprofit organization and they give a little bit of a profit to that nonprofit organization. One thing that really helps with it is, obviously this probably goes without saying, community, right? Like you all, unless you are in a really touristy spot where you never get the same traffic, you all probably want to build a community around your establishment and you want to make them feel like they're part of something bigger and they're helping. You wouldn't believe how many times they have actually used beers that are not that popular, they're not doing so well, but just because they mark them as a charity tap and people now can feel good about drinking. And everybody needs their reason. So you wouldn't believe how oftentimes that ends up being their bestseller. And it's very easy, obviously, with a PourMyBeer system, it's very easy for you to track it on the reporting, so you can see how quickly that change happened. So if you can take one thing away from this presentation today, I highly recommend doing something like a charity tab. Not only you're going to position yourself as somebody who cares for the community, but you're going to push your bad beer faster. So nobody guessed this location. Can anybody try guessing this location? Yeah. Okay, so we got point over there. Yeah, sorry guys, I could only squeeze in so much. I did not want to have the slides too text heavy. The pictures are definitely not professionally taken. A lot of them are kind of like while I'm on the fly. I was with Chris helping him open up his space and was his beverage wall ambassador, but I also want to say like main quality assurance tester to ensure that all the 68 taps are working smooth and pouring. And this was really a great experience for me too, because Chris was one of the very very few operators that even flew out to meet me in Colorado to do his research and to make sure that he will rather benefit from learning from other operators that have done certain mistakes, so he doesn't have to do the expensive mistakes by himself. So he did a lot of things with a setup right from the get-go, right? And I know he's implemented some changes. He can probably tell you more about that on the party bus or later today over the dinner or lunch. But one thing that I'll point out that's really important, especially in the big build-out places that have 20 taps and more, he's got really clear numbers. So you can easily point people like, oh, okay, you're a wine person. Go to the section, where you have 50 and up. Like that's where you will find your wine. One of the things that really help with that too is like when you have your place really busy, you don't want them to go around 68 tabs and go around every single screen and take a look like, oh, what's that? And let me read about that. We love PourMyBeer wants to give the user a good experience of learning more about the beverages, but you as an operator do not want to have your wall jammed up. So if you can make anything easier and faster, especially during the really busy time, to make that flow like, hey, send them to the IPA section. That's between 25 to 30. You want to do that. So number your tabs is definitely a big one. Highly recommended. So we got 1 point over there for the Craftworks. Moving on. Awesome. This picture, anybody takes guesses? This one is like a little cheating because you can probably read it a little bit. No? Anybody has visited this spot? It's hard to say just from the flight, but for me, I remember it. I'm a big dog. Yeah, anybody? No? I'm a big dog lover. Love dogs, foster dogs. Another fun fact, I've been fostering dogs for the last 8 years, so lots of animals came through my house. This particular tap room, it's again in Washington State, south of Seattle, in a town called Tacoma, where they build their entire concept around a dog that the owner absolutely loves and admires. Her name is Red. And as you can see, this flight is actually a paw. It's very, very neatly done. A lot of their branding on the side, it's on point, and they have a lot of dog theme everywhere, which is great. I highly recommend doing flights. That's one of the big things that it's particularly popular if you can, if you are having a lot of tabs and you have different drinks, it's nice to have some tray to easily carry things back to your table. With self-pour, people are just automatically drawn to try different things and not to pour necessarily full glasses because they will first want to experiment and see what they like. So if you don't want to risk having some of your patrons, because I've seen this too, when there's no flight trays, I have seen people carrying glasses like this and hugging them. Not the best way, not the safest way. This is how you lose glassware a little bit faster. So if there is any way, you can incorporate flights in, great. I also always recommend sample glasses. Some people don't love sample glasses because of the foaming issue. When you really, pour in a small glass, it seems like just the air, it sometimes seems more foamed up. I have seen people doing kind of like a half size for their sample glasses. It's really up to you how you decide to do it, but I just highly recommend that you encourage the sampling by having the flights available, flight trays, and it's up to you if you're gonna do sample glasses or something slightly bigger. Variety of glasses is another big one. The glassware setup, it's a science, I think, on its own. There's a lot of things that can go wrong and that can be difficult on your operations. I have seen places doing 9, 10 different style of glasses. It gets really hard on a dishwasher. So I highly recommend, depending on how busy your place is, how big of a square footage it is, what you are mainly going to pour, try to stick to about 3 to 4 different styles of glasses. We have some doing some more, right? Chris, how many glass types do you have?
I've got about 5.
5? Would you? Yeah, it is a long wall, but I mean, with all the honesty, it gets hard on your dishwasher that you have 6 of them, right? Yeah. So it's one of those things that pint might be not enough necessarily, especially if you have some high price point beers and you have imperial stouts and really some good Belgian stuff. You might want to have a few more different variations of glasses so people can choose. But at the same time, I always feel like 4 is already pushing it. You can make people very happy with just regular glasses. Also, throughout COVID, a lot of locations switched to plastic cups, and it's something, it can work for your community. It really heavily depends. I'll tell you that me as a snobby craft beer drinker, I do not order my second beer if I'm getting a plastic cup. I'm just not gonna pay $8 for a plastic cup beer. So I'll go away, and a few other people that I know of my age will go away as well. But it really comes down to your community. Everybody is different. There are certain geographical locations that are more comfortable with having the beer walking around. Maybe San Agustin is one of them, where people just do not care for the plastic cup. So you kind of have to evaluate it. I always say that at the beginning, when you're opening your location, it's great to be able to test things. You're gonna learn a lot from your community. They'll really tell you what they like and what they don't like. Same goes for beers. Like I've had so many people that, open up PourMyBeer location and they're like, well, this is going to be like the IPA haven, but nobody was drinking the IPA, so they ended up being a wine spot. So it really comes down like you doing research at the beginning of the your project and your self-pour adventure, your self-pour journey. But at the end of the day, it's really going to be your community that's going to teach you. So one of the things that you can do with the glassware setup is having a plastic cups available in case somebody really wants them, and having the glassware as well. One thing that a lot of people forget to account for when it comes to plastic cups is not only the cost that you're going to be with self-pour, you're going to sometimes have 3, 4, 5 cups used by a patron. Like they won't even use the same cup because, especially a beer snob, again, I wouldn't pour a beer that's different in the same cup. Like I don't want to mix those two flavors. And a lot of people are going to be on that same scale. So think about a busy Saturday night, having several bins filled up by 4 or 5 different plastic cups by almost every patron. So that are some of the things to consider. Again, it's something that your operation is going to work in a certain way, or it's already working in a certain way. For some it works, some it doesn't. Question?
Yes, for my market, which is hotels, I can see that where there might be a little, pushback with the glasses just because it's extra. But would there be a way to like have a custom-made glass for, the hotel could sell to their customers so they could drink out of it while they're there, and then they don't have to worry about replacing it? They could take it home with them like a souvenir.
They definitely could. But the thing is, again, with self-pour, you don't want to have that customer having to rinse that glass by themselves. Okay. That is not ideal experience for the guest. And if they have to do that, then they probably would feel like, hey, I'm rather going to go to traditional bar, right? Like again, it comes down to self-pour being as easy. You want to make it as easy and as smooth for the guest experience as possible. For hotel settings, I would probably recommend that if they don't have any staff member who can really replenish the glasses and make sure that they're always there and clean, they should probably go for the plastic cups. One more thing on the glassware I will add, I have probably 2 last slides on this setup, is definitely dishwasher capabilities. If you can, not every establishment can afford it or doesn't have a space for that in the kitchen, but I would highly recommend having a dishwasher that's dedicated specifically to your glassware. It's faster, easier. I believe that's what you have. Okay, next slide. Are we on the next slide? Some basic things to keep in mind, especially for those that, I get this question a lot when the new locations are opening, like how many glasses do you really account for when you're opening up a spot? I would say the good rule of thumb is to account for at least 2 to 3 glasses, just because you're definitely going to be running that dishwasher. The glasses will need some time to cool down. And again, you're going to have people sampling with Beverage Wall, and that's the goal. You should encourage them to sample. While we have some really heavy Bud Light drinkers community, and it's a little sad for me to poke around our BKG and see how many PourMyBeer locations all over the US are seeing that a Bud Light, Coors Light are the first one. And that fun fact about that beer, that's one of the ones that never get poured as a sample. It always gets poured at the very, very top. And if people could squeeze in some more, they probably would squeeze in some more. So it's definitely one of those things where, besides the Bud Light, Coors Light drinkers, you're going to have people wanting to try 2, 3 different things or more. So you want to have enough glasses. Another big one is that the glasses should have enough time. I'm going to step out here so the picture can happen. Another big thing over here is ensuring that your glassware has enough time to cool down. One of the fun things I've experienced when I went to Grand Open Goldsby's in Kansas was that as soon as their glasses got out of the dishwasher, the staff were already putting it at the wall. And the funny thing is that started happening is like every self-pour first timer had an awful time because everybody got 60%, 70% of their glass was foam. And the owners at the time, they had a lot of experience with hotel industry and things like that, but didn't really run a business like that before. So they didn't know that it was going to be the heat that really causes the foaminess. So little things like that. And this is obviously something you should be passing on to your staff. Just because you know some of the basics doesn't mean that everybody in your establishment, especially if you're getting new staff that are young, haven't been in the hospitality industry before, they're not going to know it. So you want to make sure that your glasses never make it to the wall until they are a good room temperature and you're not risking getting a foamy beer, because nobody likes foamy beer. And in fact, for self-pour first-timers, it's a big deal that they are able to take a picture of themselves pouring that beautiful beer, a nice small hat, but nothing too crazy. So you want to make sure that you're giving them the good experience, and it all happens starting with the right glassware, having the right temperature of the glassware. Big one, glasses should always be stocked, right? There's multiple pictures. Like this one is, I think that this is taken away from the attention of the glasses that are behind there. But this is Navigator Taproom that's pushing it a little bit more on the rule of those 4 glasses. They're actually doing 6. They do it because they do like the beer snobs and they also like the wine snobs. So they definitely want to try to make sure that they have the best experience. But as you can see in this picture, this is actually earlier in the day, before they were even open. So it wasn't me pouring those drinks for myself. I was just pouring it for the owner to try. But I will say that you can see on the back that their wall is fully replenished. They always have the glasses done by the shift that is leaving the night before. So whenever somebody enters the establishment earlier, the glassware is already all set. Of course, it had enough time to cool down. It's fully replenished and stocked. And then throughout the day, you replenish the glasses to avoid having to do it when the biggest crowd comes in. You never want to deal with the issue of not having any glasses, not having any cups to grab on, especially when the place gets busy. And also in cases of this type of setup, where they have the glasses at the bottom of the wall, what that means is that they would have to go and fight through the crowd of the thirsty drinkers, and you don't want to deal with that in the busiest time of the day. So your goal is to try to make the wall look as pretty as possible, have the glasses replenished if possible at most of the time, and take advantage of the downtime, teach your staff to do it, so it's always nice and ready for the patrons to grab and pour. And I think this is gonna be all about the glassware tips. One picture that might look familiar over here again to Chris from Craftworks, because I stole that one from him, is to use portable trays to transfer your glassware without any issues. This just saves you from that headache. As Chris mentioned, most of his glasses actually get broken by the staff members, by the bartenders, by the owners. Chris, can you see it? Can you see it over here? Familiar? So I will say that a lot of these trays are helpful to just transfer it there easy, make sure that the staff doesn't break anything. These have wheels at the bottom. I don't know how well you can see it, but they have wheels over here. So you just add the glasses over there, bring it to the beverage wall, and are able to replenish. And one more fun one. I'm not going to ask people where this picture was taken because the logo is right there, Bunnyman Brewing. I wanted to point out that what is really nice, and this was one of the things that I learned in the field that I really like what they did, is their logo is the bunny over here on the back, and it's actually back of the glass. So what they say to their first timers is they will tell them to tilt the glass 45-degree angle just to follow the bunny man. So again, that's their logo. So they don't really have to do anything complicated with explaining them like, hey, you're a first time self-pour first timers, let's do this, watch me how I pour. It's really just like, hey, kill the bunny, go after the logo. If you tilt it right enough so the liquid is hitting the bunny, you're doing things right. And the funny, cool thing is that it really is in a 45-degree angle. So I've seen so many people doing it and having fun with it, which is just a great tip again that I got in the field. I wouldn't come up with this myself. I think it's extremely clever. So again, if you're gonna take some cool stuff away from my presentation today, I would highly recommend copying what they did. Also, it is a really fun brewery to visit, so if you guys like breweries, I highly recommend them. They're awesome. I could stay there for a week. Now, to conclude this part of the presentation, I'm going to run through a few things regarding the customer experience, and this is where it all ties together. We're all in the hospitality industry to make sure that we are providing great guest experience. You study your guests, you try to make sure that whatever is not working, you can make it so it works, and so it's great and something that they want to come back to. The customer experience is where a lot of the points that I've previously covered for your successful beverage wall setup, for your successful glassware setup, that's where it all kind of comes together. So the guest has, again, very, very easy experience. So grabbing a glass, to start, the self-pour experience should always be very easy, smooth, a fun experience where you don't have to be going all over the place trying to find the glasses. It should be something very smooth. It's a no-brainer, but you wouldn't believe how many times I show up somewhere where we're supposed to grand open and the glasses are nowhere to be found and they were not incorporated in the design of the wall. So if you can take away something from today, again, especially if you haven't done your build out, make sure the glasses are very easy to spot. In ideal way, you're gonna do very inexpensive LED lights to also drive more attention to them. It looks so pretty when it's a little bit darker and dim in your establishment and you have your LED lights that are lighting up the beverage wall and ideally the glassware setup as well. It looks beautiful. Again, people take photos of it, and it attracts them to want to grab that glass and go do that another pour, and that comes back to your pocket. So you want to make sure that that's, smooth, easy experience, and they are able to grab that glass quickly. Another one is encouraging customers to use a clean glass. There's a lot of self-pour first-timers that are going to be doing it for the first time. There's a lot going on when they're, figuring out the screens and like, whoa, I'm seeing the money spent in real time. Like, this is all so cool. There's a lot going on. I highly recommend, again, for them to have a great experience and for them to see that you care for that guest experience. Is like, let me grab that glass. Let me grab that glass. If you see them that they are about to pour in the same glass, grab that from them. Have your staff members grab that glass from them and encourage them to grab a new one. Not only they're going to have a better taste of the whatever they are pouring, but it's also the fact that they suddenly see that you and your staff care for their experience and you want them to have the best taste possible. That's a place that they're going to want to come back to. Next one is numbering your taps. I already talked about that for the proper beverage wall setup, but this is where it ties back into that customer experience. So you want to make it very easy when they come to your place and they're like, I'm not really a craft beer drinker. I just want my Bud Light and Coors Light. If you have time, and if your staff members have time, you can 100% steer them to blonde ales or another lager or pilsner or something local that they can still try. But you also want to be able to point them in the right section right away. So do number your taps, so you can tell them taps between number and 1 to 5 are yours. Bud Light is the 5, but I highly, highly recommend you to try 1 to 4. Sometimes, and I've seen that happen, honestly, very often, especially in the places that do like to do like a craft beer buffet, craft beer exploration, that little pour that you can give them for free, especially you as an owner, could do that. That's all that they sometimes need to get started and to sample a lot more things that, again, will eventually come back to your pocket. So sometimes giving a free pour on something like a blonde ale or a lager, if it's a typical Bud Light drinker, it might be a good investment for you, and it's a very inexpensive investment where you can have them have a lot more fun. And I've had people that told me like, I haven't had anything but Bud Light for 20 years. And like, now I'm like enjoying this honey wheat ale and, trying new things. So it's really just all about giving them that little push and sometimes off they go. And it's a good at the end of the night when they are closing their bill. So that was that. And then on the customer experience sorry, any question?
Yeah, on the previous slide, go back. The trays, you have that percentage, 18, 20, is that for the cards to throw the tip?
Yeah, so I'll actually specifically talk about this as well. We call it express checkout. A lot of different establishments are executing it differently. At this point, I would say that at least 30-40% of PourMyBeer locations already have express checkouts, because it's just one of those things where, again, you're busy, you have 3-4 staff members working, sometimes more if it's a bigger square footage, but you want to make it as fast and as smooth as possible. If there is a big line of people coming to the door and the staff members are busy with getting those people checked in, replenishing the wall, and in some cases even running food, you don't want them to worry about the checkout. So we highly recommend having the express checkout so people can just drop their card in the specific box. Chris from Craftworks even has like a really cool system that you can probably show them some pictures of your way of doing express checkout later and talk about that. But I highly, highly recommend that. It makes it faster.
Now, if they forget to drop the card in, do you have to set up where the tip is, you have it automatically set?
Signage. I always say the answer is signage. If you want to, you can do have a signage at the beginning of your checkout at the check-in station, where you will say that a 20% gratuity will be automatically charged to your card if you don't return it. Typically, people are very good at returning it, but you know what it comes down to, again, have this in a visible place. So this particular location, nobody guessed this probably, Tapster Seattle, they have at least 3 different spots for their dirty glasses, which is also really important to have a spot where people clearly know right away where to put their dirties. And on the top of that, they have multiple boxes around the establishment that are obviously enclosed. One big thing with the tipping boxes that I have learned the hard way is that you need to make sure that nobody can put their hand back in and grab that card again. I've had some locations that try fishbowl. Fishbowl didn't work very well. It ended up being a big issue when the customer called the next day and it's like, hey, I only had 2 beers and I'm seeing $50 charge on my card. So you kind of want to make sure that it's something that you can enclose. We all want to believe that people are great and they have the best heart and the best intention possible. But if somebody sees an opportunity to drink for free and they've already drank some, sometimes they take it. So you don't want to give them to that. Was there another question? I felt like I saw a hand coming up, but okay, cool. Okay, so again, this is just tying back to what I was talking about, the proper beverage wall setup. So with the grouping beverages by the type, really Belgian, sour, crispy, anything that you're doing. Anybody knows this location? No? All right. Copper and Flame, these guys are in Cincinnati.
Copper and Flame, but
Okay.
it's either drink the water.
You know what, this is probably taken like a year ago, so maybe they didn't have it if you were there.
2 months ago.
Okay. All right, so maybe they took it out, but I'll still give you the point. So you're about to get one. So I will just say again, grouping beverages by the type, easy for your customers. Put how the signage, video or graphic, whatever you decide. PourMyBeer has a lot of general resources available to you, and I have the link here in the slides. As much as I would love to have my logo on there and have it visible across your establishment, again, you can easily use ours and give it to your local designer, and they can work on your own design. You can have your own logo on it. You can make it pretty, maybe put even a local tagline, appeal to your audience again. And then have a wall ambassador. That's the one that I'm gonna finish up this part of the presentation with. So Maya, if you can hop onto the next one. I'll talk to him about him after this slide, but the beverage wall ambassador, one of the things that I do want to say is a lot of our locations start without one and kind of just have a staff members at the front of the house dedicated to be able to do this guest experience with a self-pour. I highly recommend having somebody specifically dedicated to be the beverage wall ambassador. It doesn't matter what you call that role, but have somebody who is passionate about your beverage offering, knows a lot about that. It's going to be huge help. And I'll talk about this role shortly. This is the express checkout box that we were just talking about. So I put a few photos examples over here. It's very common that people do just the 15 and 20%. My personal favorite out of the 130 locations that I've been to, again, being a big dog lover, and I also love cats. So I would say I was, oh my God, there's nothing in this box. There was a lot of cards in the other one. I was like, this almost makes me feel like I don't want to tip because I want to do something to the kitty. I want to give something to the kitty. So it's really, really funny. This is one of our locations. It's called Bark Social. They have 2 locations with PourMyBeer right now. They'll be opening a lot more. They're currently on East Coast, but I'm hoping one is coming to Colorado soon. They do some great stuff together. What it is, the concept is they're a dog park that has a small entrance fee for anybody to come in and have their dogs play. But they want to capture also fun for adults, so they're making some money off their beer wall that's now also a wine wall. You wouldn't believe how well, first of all, people, especially like younger generation that won't have kids till later these days, they'll have their doggos as their kiddos. So they bring them there to have fun while the adults are having their fun as well. They are doing really well with the tipping. One thing I'll say that they have something to cover it at the top because there is a staff member here all the time. She said that they never really have an issue, but again, something to be cautious if you're ever leaving the station where you have your tips, please make sure it's enclosed so you don't have anybody grabbing it, because I could have grabbed anything I wanted, but this one is Bark Social. Bark Social. I believe they have 2 locations and a third one on the way right now. They're a fantastic spot. I think you can just, if you're a dog person like me, you can just go there without a dog like me and just hang out and get a lot of dog cuddles out of your system. So it's pretty fun. Awesome. And last thing on the customer experience, is going to be that, if you're going to charge something for your unreturned cards, I highly recommend that, again, you have a signage for it. Majority of you that are already operating, I believe you have it on the back of our RFID cards, actually, usually. That's a good spot to put it. But I also say, having a signage that you are charging them something extra for unreturned cards, it's just gonna save you some headaches. It's also just gonna protect you in case that somebody is complaining that they got that additional charge. I had some really weird things happen when I was running a couple of locations in Colorado. We had people coming in, check in. They didn't actually pour anything, and they got charged $3 for unreturned card because that's all. They just hanged around in the establishment, never returned the card, and there was a $3 charge. So they call back next day, and they're like, "Hey, why am I seeing $3 charge?" So you want to have the signage around, you want to communicate that. Ideally, you even make it as a part of the process. They're like, hey, either drop it in one of those express checkouts if you're going to have them, or check out here with one of my friendly staff members or myself, and that's as easy as that. Jumping into the Beverage Wall Ambassador program. So Beverage Wall Ambassador, it's crucial role where I'm using a picture over here, maybe some of them over there back. My colleagues know this guy was amazing and trained a lot of our locations on doing Beverage Wall program ambassador, right? There's a lot of different names that people use, beer wall tender, beverage specialist, beer wall ambassador, whatever you want to call them. You can call them self-pour expert. It should be a person that is not only comfortable with customers and explaining them how this beauty works, but also obviously giving them the excitement of like, hey, this is what you want to try, this is what you want to pair up with something. I even say I try to encourage people saying like, hey, oh, by the way, that pairs really well with our chicken, or this pairs really well with our quesadillas. You know, if you want to boost your sales a little bit too on sales for food, you can have them understand that maybe these 3-4 different groups categories are very good with certain foods, and you will see that will also skyrocket your sales. So you can add that to it if you obviously are serving food. You can hop on the next one. Perfect. Few things that I got asked a lot about, and like where can you post the Beverage Wall Ambassador? I included LinkedIn here because I've actually seen it worked in some of the locations, which to me is really weird. I don't look at LinkedIn as something where I would be looking for my Beverage Wall Ambassador. Weirdly enough, from majority, especially the customers that I have around in Colorado, Craigslist works really well for them. They're using that for it. And the bigger one that I particularly like is have a friend, bring a friend to work, right? Like you want to, overall, as an establishment, you want to have a friendly atmosphere. You want to have people that work on the team that work really well with each other. So I really highly recommend that you incentivize your team members to bring another friend, especially if you have, younger demographics and it's students that are just really looking to make money. They usually have a lot of other students in the class. They already have other friends. Not only they're going to have a lot more fun training them, but they're also going to have a lot more fun keeping them around. So they're going to want to make sure that they set them up for success, train them well. They're going to want to hang out. So it's a really good path to take if you're hiring, instead of just using the Craigslist and typical online postings like everybody else does. Try to incentivize your staff. I've seen some locations like Stanley Beer Hall in Denver, where I'm a regular. They actually do $500 for anybody new who is hired and who stays around for 2 months. So they will incentivize that staff member that brought that new person in. As long as they stayed around for 2 months, they'll incentivize them $500. You wouldn't believe. They never have to post on Craigslist. They never have to post on Facebook. They have their people bring other people. And it's great because they have a nice, friendly atmosphere, and friends are working with friends. Friends working together, usually a lot more fun. They also have a lot more fun after they clock out, and they still stay around in the establishment and drink some in your place. So yeah, definitely highly recommend that. What skills you should look for when hiring a Beverage Wall Ambassador? I just put some basic things over here. Someone outgoing, social, chatty, somebody who enjoys your beverage program, whatever you're offering. We have some locations that are really just doing wine, so they will even invest in some of the similar courses to just get a basic understanding of really being able to be a little bit more geeky and educate your audience. It comes down to what you're selling and what you're going to be offering, but you want to make sure that you're getting somebody who's not going to just stand there by the wall and kind of wait for what's going to happen. And if the self-pour first timers ask them something, you want to have them come to them, invite them, be fun and definitely knowledgeable about whatever your beverage offering is. I also say it's usually very helpful to have someone that is able to learn a script. I know, John, you have a script as well for your self-pour first-timers. It's something, I think I linked it over here. It's somewhere in the presentation. I have linked that. I think it's going to be on the next one probably. There is definitely a link to our script page at some point somewhere. This might look a little familiar over here. I will say I can't stretch it enough how important it is that for your self-pour first-timers, you provide them with a script. They never have to say it word by word. 100% not. Please don't do it to them. It's a lot of work to learn something word by word, but you just have them read it 3-4 times so they get familiar with it. And my main goal is there are a few main points that they need to hit, that they need to explain. For example, that it's paid and pour by the ounce, that you have an express checkout if you have. There are a few main points, so have them kind of memorize just those 7 main points. It's up to them, if they tweak it a little bit, how they explain it, but make sure that you communicate that to them and they have some sort of script or main points in place so they can follow that. They also need to feel comfortable pouring. I'm gonna just ask anybody knows where this picture was taken. Yes, perfect. So you got a point over there. It's one of those locations that is like you could probably spend a week over there and have a lot of fun. John will tell you more about it later in his speech, but I'll just quickly summarize a few things that are really good for the beverage wall ambassadors to know. And again, it's coming back to you knowing a lot of things, but it's about you educating it to your staff and making sure that they are able to educate your patrons. Because as much as you would probably, well, I don't know if you would like it to be at your place 24/7 or know what's happening 24/7, and some of you know thanks to cameras or will know thanks to cameras, you want to make sure that your staff members are able to communicate if there are any issues, like why it might be happening. So some of the things that I experience a lot is new people that are new to hospitality industry don't have a lot of experience, and if they end up working as a beverage wall ambassador, which oftentimes is also the starting position in a business, the reasons why the beers is foamy, it's good for them to understand it so they can fix it, and they can also educate the customer. Everything when it comes to, if they can teach them how to fish, they won't have to fish for them again, right? So, some of the things they will be fixing themselves, like beverage wall ambassadors should know that the keg has been stored in a proper temperature and it's been sitting in the cooler long enough to be cold enough. But I've definitely seen it happen where, a keg that was sitting out just got put in a cooler and then a couple of hours later it's tapped. If the liquid inside is not cold enough as it needs to be, I mean, you have an issue right there, and that's going to come out foamy. We also talked about the warm glasses. Another thing that they should be familiar with is the pressure of the beer flow. That's something that your local draft system installer should educate you on a little bit. We also highly recommend, PourMyBeer highly recommends doing micromatic training. It's a small investment, 2-day training, and it helped our entire team to know a lot more. If you're serious about serving proper beer and making the guest experience the best possible and understand a little bit of the science that's happening in the cooler, micromatic training was one of the best investment that we've done for our employees. And actually a lot of the PourMyBeer operators that I know around Colorado have taken that as well. Super helpful. Another thing is oftentimes the issue of not getting your glass full of foam for the self-pour first-timers is really just that they're not doing the right angle. So that's something that you will have your beverage wall ambassador educate them on. On my last 2 slides should be right here. So one thing I will also stretch is you don't want to have just a random stranger walking around. Most of you, and also like most of the PourMyBeer fan members that I'm seeing, have a dedicated staff member shirts that you can tell, like, okay, this is the name of the establishment, there's a logo on it and some branding. One thing I highly recommend with your beverage wall ambassador, if it's a role that's specifically assigned to serve that space, have some fun with it. Have some fun with it. I have seen some, you've been to District Brewer, John. District Brewer has a pour your damn beer on their shirt in really, really big letters, and they all know, they're there working around the wall. They have a hat with the logo, and then pour your damn beer in the front and the back of the shirt. There's a lot of ways to do it. You can really just call them beverage wall tender, beverage wall ambassador, beverage wall help. You can call it whatever you want, or beer expert is really fun. A lot of people like to work having a shirt beer expert. It's up to you what you do, but put some shirt on them, put something nice on them that will make them not only feel special, but mainly, again, this ties back to the guest experience. You want to make sure that your guest knows that they are the specialist there. They're somebody that can advise them. Have a mock screen. I included this picture over here. This one has, actually, this is just a mock reader, but what happens in a busier establishment or a bigger square footage spaces that you are checking people and say over here, but the beverage wall is over there. Of course, you should still have that check-in station by the beverage wall, but if you're checking people mostly at the front of the establishment and you're pretty far from the wall, it's very helpful if you have at least a mock of the RFID card reader, so you can just show them like, yep, once when you are pouring, you're ready to pour, you just insert your card in, you leave it in there, and then whenever you're done pouring, you'll take the card out and you will see the magical number of how much you've spent and how much you've poured. It's something we highly recommend because when somebody comes for the very first time, there's a lot of information that they're processing. So it's helpful to either have a mock screen or having a mock card reader. I also included a couple of links for you over here so you can later study some of that if you want to, and we can hop on the last, it should be a last slide at this point. I'm not gonna play these videos, but I do wanna emphasize again, we talked about this for the proper setup. Having a how it works video is very helpful. You can watch it later once when you get the slides over here. I've seen locations going to the path where like Hop Thief, they spend I believe $1,000 on a videographer that came out and really did how it works video that was used at the top of their beverage wall, and then how it works video that was just used for like their social media and for their website. The $1,000 investment for them has I think that their video has at least 5,000 views on YouTube, has a lot of views on social, like you could go and count it from different places. But $1,000 investment is 100% worth it when it's something that you're going to be really utilizing and putting it out there. Another cheaper path, this was a Wanderlust winery in Texas that just did multiple different small videos with their staff members. I didn't go and count the views, but I know that, for example, they're really big on Instagram. So if they did something on Instagram, they would, push it there, reuse it several times. One cool thing that they also did is they did the same video with different thumbnail multiple times. And if you post the same video a few months later with a different thumbnail, nobody really knows that it's the same video. So you can go a little bit cheaper on that. And I think that should conclude this. This is just a resources for you. So those are going to be how it works graphics, how it works video. One thing, again, that I emphasize here, if you hop on that page with the graphics, you will see about 20 different graphics that our designers created. Those are just basic, like put the card here, angle the glass 45 degrees. I don't care about you using ours. At least use it for your designers, get your logo on it, have something for your first timers. So, they're not just lost there standing by an empty wall. And then the final slide, back to my bartender doc. We'll share this again. Like I said, the slides will be shared. I will give out a few of these cards, even though there were no 3 points. But thank you so much for paying attention. We'll do a little break, 5-10 minutes before we have John come up. So thank you guys. Appreciate your attention. I'm gonna give myself a clap. If somebody can clap too, I'll take it. Thank you.